Good morning. My name is Dr. Celia Stall-Meadows, and I'm here to talk to you about textile recycling. As you can see, this presentation will be about a tour that I took back in 2010 of the Tulsa Adult Rehabilitation Center for the Salvation Army. This is a tour of the Donation Processing Center, and while the date is a few years old, it's still very valid information. For more information, you can find a fact sheet that I authored at the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service. There's the link to it. There's an image of it above. And the Environmental Protection Agency website also has some information on textile recycling, and there's also a link to the fact sheet that I wrote for OSU. So what happens to your donations of unwanted household clothing and textiles? This presentation walks you through a donation processing center and shows you how the textiles are reprocessed, repurposed, or resold. Most importantly, never throw anything away, even if it is torn, stained, faded, wholly, or just generally unwearable. All textiles and apparel still have value on the secondary market, no matter what the condition. Donate and let the charity decide. Clothing donations are loaded into wheeled carts. They're 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 5 feet high, so they come up to about my forehead. They're very big, and as you can see, there's an assortment of clothing. There are boxes and paper sacks and just various things that people have donated clothing and other household items in. What happens to donated textiles? At the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center, it is processed by 80 to 85 beneficiaries, and these are men that are in the rehab center. They work about 40 hours a week processing incoming merchandise that's been donated, but it's an 80-day drug and alcohol rehabilitation program, so they spend the weekends doing Bible studies and 12-step, programs and just various things to help them get their lives back in order. They prepare donated items for resale in Tulsa's 3 Salvation Army stores. The men even wear the donated clothing. The store sales are the primary source of income and pay for the residents' food, clothing, shelter, and supplies. If things are donated that are of value, of great value, like antiques or heirlooms or collectibles, the Salvation Army Adult Rehabilitation Center has an antique lady who extracts and handles all the valuables. These are also sold in the store. They may also be sold on eBay, but jewelry and other valuables are kept under lock and key in the stores, and they're sold just like other items, but we want to make sure that they get a fair price for them, so they have someone who's an expert. The sorted clothing, as you can see by this image, there's a roll rack with about 100 pieces on it, and it's sorted by color. Processing. The beneficiaries unload the trucks into these big blue bins that you saw earlier. They hire female employees to sort the clothing, and they do that because generally women are better shoppers. They know their brands, they know quality better than men. Just generally they understand fashion, and that's important in a retail store. So the women sort into 6 price points. They can be $2.99 barrels, a $3.99 barrel, and all the way up to a $9.99. The sorted clothing, they take a pair of jeans, they look at it, they flip it around, they make sure there are no holes or stains on it, and they sort it by tossing it into whatever price point that they think is appropriate. The beneficiaries then hang the pre-sorted clothing on hangers and hang them on roll racks that hold about 100 pieces. Each roll rack gets its own price point. The beneficiaries staple the price on the collar of the item, and it might be like a blue price tag for this week. The female employees assign sorted clothing to one of the 3 stores, and each store gets about 8 or 9 roll racks per day. Merchandising in stores. It's much like in any retail store. Each store is stocked daily with new items. The blue tag is for full price or new items during the first week. So One week they'll have blue tags, another week they'll have yellow tags, another week they'll have green tags, and that way they can tell approximately what day or what week merchandise was received into a store. After 3 weeks, it goes to 1/2 price, and after 4 weeks, it's at even greater discounts. So if it doesn't sell, it's sent back to the processing warehouse for reconsideration. So the question is, what happens to items that don't sell in the Salvation Army stores? The items are brought back to the processing warehouse and evaluated. They decide, should they just reprocess it and send it to a different store? They may look at it again and say, oh my goodness, there's a hole or a stain that I didn't see the first time around. So those are sent to a different location. If it's appliances or furniture or other big ticket items, they may be sold at an as-is auction to junk dealers, much like Sanford & Son on television, but the auction occurs twice weekly for non-clothing items. Furniture, bric-a-brac, electronics, etc. Those things are sold. They may bundle the unsellable clothing and put it in 1,500 to 1,600 pound bales and sell it for, it could be 15 cents a pound. I've seen it for as high as 30 cents a pound. It just depends on whatever the market is willing to bear for that time period. But it's sold as raw or unsorted rags to rag dealers from Dallas and Kansas City. This is called ragging it out. Unsold furniture is sold as is to auctions at auctions twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Here's a picture of a steel baler, and as you can see, there's a big, it's like a compactor, there's a big steel plate that comes down from above and it compacts the clothing that's down inside the pit. And you can see a tan piece of lingerie that's hanging on the edge of the baler. It's a very deep pit, but it compresses the clothing, makes room for more clothing, and it compresses that. So here's another picture of the baler. The baler has a 10 to 12 feet deep pit in the floor of the warehouse that's filled with this unsorted, unsold clothing. If you look at that image, you can see a pair of a man that's actually standing on the edge of the pit, and you can see his boots, so that gives you a perspective on what the size of this hole is. But there's a variety of clothing down in there. There's nylon, there's cotton, there's polyester, there's rayon, just an assortment of items that didn't sell or couldn't be sold in the retail store. Obviously, if you can donate something that's new or like new, it's of greater value, but even things that are torn or stained or holey or faded can be sold as to rag dealers by the pound. So don't throw anything away. Once full, the compactor compresses clothing, leaving another 6 feet of space in the bin to fill, so they fill it up some more. Here's an image of a bale of clothing, and you can see it's sandwiched in between cardboard, but it weighs about 1,500 to 1,600 pounds. Here's a stack of bales. So now we're waiting. These are all the items that didn't sell in the retail stores or that couldn't be sold in the retail stores. So it's a large amount of money just in rags. These bales are awaiting pickup by a rag dealer out of Dallas or Kansas City. And to give it a perspective, there's that 5 feet high bin, and so you can see just how much in the way of clothing that can be resorted. So what happens to these bales? Each bale is valued at approximately $225 to $250 or more depending on the time. It was 15 cents a pound in 2010. It's sold to rag dealers, and they do a variety of things with it. They may shred it and use it for stuffing and padding. It may be transported to a port city and shipped internationally, where basically rag dealers in other countries open up these and pull out the usable items and sell those on the market. They are especially liking items like NBA merchandise or NFL merchandise or Walt Disney merchandise, just things that are very Western. In summary, there is no trash when it comes to clothing and textiles or any donated items. 100% or nearly 100% of all items can be recycled. Unsaleable clothing is baled and sold by the pound. Comforters and bedspreads are given to the homeless in the community. Mattresses that are donated are cleaned with a high-powered chemical called Sterifab. It is a multi-purpose cleaner. It is an antifungal, an antibacterial, an insecticide. It kills a whole host of living organisms. But it's sealed for about 30 days, and then once the plastic is removed, it can be resold. Furniture is shampooed and vacuumed, and appliances are repaired or sold as is at the auction. So remember, never throw anything away. Let the charity decide.